Hey, everybody. Welcome to one solid hour of breaking news on two very big stories in the true crime world, Bryan Kohberger and the R&B singer named David. Let's begin with the Idaho murders. It's been a complete mystery what Bryan Kohberger did and where he went in the hours after butchering those 4 innocent college kids in Moscow, Idaho. We were all shocked when we saw a chilling selfie emerge of Kohberger just hours after the murders, smiling and giving a thumbs up in the bathroom of his student apartment. But tonight, for the first time, we have full-on high-definition video of what he did right after he snapped that selfie. Same clothes, standing in a Costco. What he was doing the very moment his sadistic crimes were coming to light. I'm going to show you all of his movements, frame by frame, all the places he went, the things he bought. That's all coming in just a moment. And also tonight we have the biggest break in the case of a dead teenage girl found in the trunk of an up-and-coming R&B singer. For the first time, we know the relationship between that 20-year-old singer, David, spelled with a 4, and a 14-year-old runaway named Celeste Rivas-Hernandez was in fact a romantic relationship. By all accounts, that age difference and the fact that Celeste was reported missing by her family would make that relationship highly illegal. I'm going to unpack all of that and the other major developments in this case, including the movers who just showed up at his mansion with a few people with their faces wrapped in black. All of that is coming in a few moments, but let me begin in Idaho with some shocking surveillance video of Bryan Kohberger. It's video that has been under wraps for almost 3 years. It is early afternoon, November 13th, 2022. You will probably remember that was a Sunday, and an ordinary college town in Idaho was just waking up to a nightmare that would turn that town, that college, and dozens of families upside down. Moscow, Idaho, and soon the whole world was just learning that a quadruple murder suspect was out there on the loose. And tonight, we can actually see what that murderer, what Bryan Kohberger was doing while on the loose. He was out and about at a Costco and at a coffee shop and at a supermarket the very morning that he slaughtered those 4 kids in their beds. Out and about like he didn't have a care in the world, like it was any other Sunday. Gray Hughes was the first to bring this incredible surveillance footage to light. He hosts the podcast and YouTube channel Gray Hughes Investigates. Gray was also the first person to obtain the surviving roommate's 911 call. Welcome back to the program, Gray. It's good to have you. I just want to start by saying I watched your entire episode and it gave me chills. I wanted to ask you your first thoughts upon seeing these nonchalant actions of this murderer just hours after he did what he did.
I think that's what it is right there. It's how casual he was, like it was just an ordinary day. There's no way any of those people around would have thought that he had any part in killing 4 people just, about 8 hours prior to that, you know? He walks in there. I mean, he's kind of a clueless type person, though. It's kind of, I mean, it's pretty strange. You would go into a Costco without a card or something and think you can go in and buy a drink. It almost feels like that's why he was going around to these different places. He went there maybe to get that coffee drink, and then he goes over to, Kate's Cup of Joe. We'll probably see her in a minute. And
well, let me take you frame by frame. I want to go in. Great. I want to go in sequence because you are really, really thorough in how you put this together. So let me start. This is Clarkston, Washington, which is important to say because it's hours after the murder. And Clarkston is 33 miles south of Pullman and Moscow. It's about a 40-minute drive. So he's a long way away from where these murders took place. But the first video I want to show is when he did that walk into Costco. I want to play it again because there's something significant. He gets stopped. And I think what we've all kind of figured out here is that the greeter, he's about to walk right by the greeter, and the greeter says, "Give me your card, your membership, and take me from there."
Yeah, and he just sort of stands there. He probably sounds similar to when he was talking to the police officer, the female police officer, when he was pulled over. It's interesting how he was holding his left hand when he came in. It was kind of oddly, shaped, and that's the hand that has the Band-Aid on it, right? So maybe he was trying to hide that hand a little extra. I mean, you can kind of see, look how he's moving in. See how it's kind of like, it's not really that natural the way he's holding it right there. See that? Very kind of strange. He doesn't sort of casually relax next to him. It's sort of a weird shape. And now he puts it in his pocket. I don't know if he just does that or he doesn't want somebody to notice his hand. But, he's just probably coming up with excuses like, hey, we don't have Costco's in Pennsylvania, so maybe I thought I could just come in and buy a coffee or something. I mean,
well,
I don't
it's
know.
interesting.
We don't know what he's saying.
Maybe,
I wish
maybe this is the only essence of a conscience that he might have, is that he's feeling the pain of the cut on that left finger that's bandaged, and maybe is, subconsciously hiding it because it's the only sign of what he's just done a mere 8 hours before this video was taken. I want to show him after he leaves this Costco and is basically rebuked by the greeter because he doesn't have a membership or at least a card. He walks out, and this is the white Elantra. He's driving that now infamous white Elantra out of the Costco parking lot. This is 12:37 p.m., which is such a significant time because, Gray, this is 39 minutes since the initial 911 call came in to the police about what was found in that house.
It's always interesting to have those juxtaposition of different time frames like that. There's people, in a completely different place that are just now horrified by what he did, and he's casually walking around doing things that normal people do. And he knows while driving around that he's killed 4 people, It's crazy.
And we talked at length after this date about, a white Elantra. We're on the hunt for a white Elantra, and there it was that morning driving past Costco. Also, just want to mention that this is also the moment, Gray, where police are at the house and they are questioning roommates who are so shaken they can barely stand, and they're in the cold, in their, almost pajamas and shorts and T-shirts, trying to answer the questions of the police. They don't even know that Kaylee and Maddie are dead on the 3rd floor at this point. They don't even know that Xana and Ethan are dead. They just know something terrible has happened. I want to go to your next video, and it's just as he leaves that Costco parking lot, and he heads past a place called Kate's Cup of Joe. Can you walk me through this next video and what you saw where the Elantra passes by the coffee shop, and point out where it is on the screen?
Yeah, the coffee shop was just prior to that. So if you have to scroll back, he drove right through the actual driveway of the sort of a little miniature coffee shop, and then he does a U-turn, and you can just see, look how slow he's moving around. You'll see it again here in a second. See that little building right there in the upper right-hand corner with the roof on it? That's the coffee shop, Kate's Cup of Joe. The camera's coming from the chef store, and I'm the one that's zooming it around, just making it a little bit clearer. So you're just following the Elantra, and it comes in, and then it actually stops in the parking lot for a little bit. Now, I don't know if he's waiting in line to pull out onto the road, but he just kind of hangs out there for a while. And it seems like maybe Kate's Cup of Joe was closed, and he's just looking for coffee.
I checked. I actually checked because I wondered the same thing. And so the team, the Banfield team, checked and found out that Kate's Cup of Joe is open on Sundays from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And so he's there, and it's after 12:30 in the afternoon. In fact, this is a half mile away from the Costco where he just left the parking lot, and it's a 3-minute drive by car. So if he left the Costco at 12:37, it's now 12:40, and this is when he's driving by. So Kate's Cup of Joe is open. It's sort of odd that he passes by, given weird, where he's about to head next. And before we head next, do show this part as the car drives to the right-hand side of the screen. It's just almost out of frame, but you're right. It does stop. And I think it stops for like, what, a minute or so?
Yeah, it just kind of sits there and then eventually pulls out and turns left, and you can really watch it all the way around, even on the curve. If you just keep watching in the distance, where it's heading to the next place, Albertsons. But, I don't know what he's doing all these different times where he stops. Even when I guess even later when he leaves Albertsons, he sits in his car again for 5 minutes before driving away. So he does these.
So this is the video where the Elantra is going to come to a stop on the far right-hand side of the screen, almost in the middle of the parking lot, and it just doesn't move. Unfortunately, we've cut the video there. But I can just promise you that what Gray showed us was that Elantra stops. And it's hard to tell, but it doesn't look like it's waiting for traffic. It just looks like it might be grabbing a phone call or maybe a text. And Gray, that was important because we know that he was calling his mother and texting with his mother multiple times this morning. And this is only, again, 8 hours after he has slaughtered these kids, and only 3 hours since he drove by the home again to double check maybe where his knife sheath was. So let's move on to the next spot. He's past the Kates. He didn't stop there, it appears. And now he heads to an Albertsons, which is not very far away. It's like right next to the Costco. So here's the white Elantra coming into the Albertsons. So he's driven far away. So, he's driven 3 minutes by car, a half mile away to the Kates. And then he's driven back to this Albertsons and he's into this parking lot.
Yeah, and then he's going to pull in next to a dark truck. And you can follow him all the way in. And, after this video that I made, I actually edited another version where, it's sequenced. So the timing inside the building is matched up with the timing of the car parking and then walking in. So it just looks like an actual, like a video, a film where it cuts to the next camera right when it's supposed to. But he parks right over there. If you watch it, I don't know if it keeps playing, but he parks next to a truck and then gets
unfortunately,
out.
We've shown these two views of the white Elantra coming in, but what he does is he drives to the left-hand side of the screen and he parks way over in that left upper-hand corner. Let's roll the next video where he's now walking from his car and into the Albertsons, because, of course, what we're all watching for is trying to get a close-up look of his face, which is coming, just not right now. And I remembered, Gray, you were looking at this the first time and you weren't sure if it was him, but now, as you said, you sequenced, right?
Yeah, and then I was able to kind of tell, because with the dark pants and the shirt, that it was him. Later, I did another live stream after that, but yeah, you can see him turn in, and then right there, you pick it up on the next camera as he's coming in. There's a lot of, overlapping time frames where there's nothing happening, but if you go with the actual time, you can sync it up.
And this is 12:46 p.m., so it's 9 minutes since he left that Costco parking lot. And like you said, by the way, these two parking lots, the Costco and this Albertsons, are just separated by a road. So he's sort of driven away and come back. Now, he walks out of frame here. Let's go to the next video where he's going to walk into frame, because he's walking in. There he is, walking into the Albertsons. We're getting a lot closer now to seeing him up close and personal. This is 12:49. And you can, clearly see that this is the same person who was walking through the parking lot. So it's easy to match that to this picture. And
that previous clip was also in the same 12:49. It was when, I think 12:46 is when he pulled in, because those two match up right with each other. So he goes around, and then he comes around to the self-checkout. You literally see him move I don't know if you guys play that part, but he moves the bottle in front of the machine, and it registers, and he puts it down.
Play the next video as Gray is talking. I just want to make sure that we follow you and what you're saying, Gray. So here is the next video, Gray. You said he walked over to the left-hand side where there were coffee drinks, and there he is at the self-checkout on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see the light shirt, dark pants.
Yeah, and you could see he put it next to the machine and registered it. Now he's putting a card or something right there, and he's going to pay for it, and he puts it in the bag in a moment here, and
he's in the store,
then just walks
for
out
7
nonchalantly.
minutes.
Yeah,
he's in the store for 7 minutes total. It comes out with a bag, and I think what you had mentioned was the coffee drink, which made me wonder: was he going into the Costco? And by the way, I can't help but just note that this is like the first close up, of his face as he's walking by this camera in the Albertsons. And I think we've got a slow down version of it, so you just sort of catch it a little bit better. I just see this is a guy who just doesn't seem to be concerned about anything. And it is astounding to see all these people who crossed paths with a maniacal killer, having no idea who was in their midst. All the while, they were all about to find out about the hell that had happened, you know, in the town just 30 minutes away. But he's walking away, and I guess the assumption is that he wanted to go to Costco to get this coffee drink, maybe drove right by Kate's, didn't realize it was open maybe, and then ended up at this Albertsons to get whatever it is in that bag and maybe the coffee drink.
I wonder if at Kate's Cup of Joe they have a break time, you know? They have to have lunch too, so it's possible he was there, but it'd be kind of stupid to take a break right when most people would want to go get a coffee, you know, like right during their lunchtime.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
so
kind of
now
like,
he leaves the store.
Yep.
He leaves the store. He leaves the store at 12:58, and this is him again heading back out across the Albertsons parking lot with that bag, and heading towards the car. I keep wondering, Gray, if this, you know, where are we in the process of him getting rid of evidence? Has he done it in the 8 hours leading up to this, prior to getting back to his apartment and showering? Is he still got evidence in that car that he plans to ditch? Because he's in Clarkston. He's 33 miles south of Pullman and Moscow here.
Yeah, my thing is I'm not sure. I'm wondering if this whole trip down here because he must have turned his phone off right after he leaves right here at 104. You see it at the top there. It's almost like he turned his phone off, and because it was 4.5 hours later that he turns it on near Johnson, Washington at 5:32 to 5:36, and that's right near where there's this tree that somebody said they saw a white vehicle parked next to, and then when law enforcement went out there, they saw that the earth was disturbed, and they checked around with the metal detectors and so forth, and they didn't find anything. But I wonder if this was like the scouting mission, and then he goes and collects the knife and the clothing at like 5:32, 5:40-ish time frame, and then he takes those items and puts it somewhere where he's aware. You know, now he's scouted out. He puts it there, and then he doesn't turn his phone back on again until 8:30 when he's back in Pullman. So he turned it off during all that crucial time frame. So that's kind of how I'm thinking it's a possibility.
It's fascinating because he gets into that he gets into his car at Albertsons at 104 and sat in the car for 6 minutes before leaving. Or rather, he gets back to the car at 12:58. He leaves the parking lot at 104. So he's 6 minutes in that parking lot. Maybe again on the phone with mother. Don't know, but. For the next 5 hours, as you mentioned so astutely in your videos, he is off the radar. Gray, fantastic journalism, just really great, because this has been so chilling. So many people wondering, what are all the blanks in this story that we didn't learn because there was no trial? And as it were, things are going to drop. Eventually, we will hopefully learn a lot more about what he did, why he did it. We're not there yet, but every little piece is a part of the puzzle. Great work. Thank you for coming on to share that with me. I really appreciate it, Gray.
No problem. You want to hear one last thing really quick? Check this out. You can, in the other surveillance footage that I got, 3 times you can see it's missing a front license plate. You see it when it's driving by A&W at 5:25 in the morning, and then at 9:13 when it comes back into Moscow, Idaho, it all shows it not having a front plate. I couldn't believe it. I was just going, this is crazy. For those who want to watch a lot more of your videos as you continue to drop them, because Gray has more coming, everybody. Check him out on YouTube at Gray Hughes Investigates. I hope you come back on with us again as we continue to look at all of this material that's dropping. Thanks, Gray. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. All right, we got to stop down for a moment. But the other big story that we've been following, our first confirmation that David, the singer, was indeed dating the underage teenager who was found dead in his car. Does that mean an arrest is on the way? The reporter who broke the story and spoke with David's friends is next. If you've been following our coverage of the runaway teenager and the rising R&B superstar, you know that new details continue to surface every day and that some of what we thought we knew at first was wrong. But tonight's coverage starts with a bombshell. The first confirmation that Celeste Rivas-Hernandez, the underage girl found decomposing in the trunk of the singer's impounded Tesla, was in fact dating that much older singer. The singer is known to the world as David, spelled D4vd, but known to the police as 20-year-old David Anthony Burke, his real name. And while 20 may not sound very old, it is when compared to Celeste, who was just 14 when she likely died and has been missing since she was 13. By many accounts, it seems that David and Celeste had been dating for quite some time as well. TMZ is reporting that people who knew David and Celeste socially took it as a given that they were a couple, a romantic couple. David's friends said they thought Celeste was 19. As we've reported before, she and David apparently were acquainted when she was just 12 and conceivably could have met when Celeste was just 11. In just a minute, you're going to see my interview with the TMZ producer who spoke with the couple's friends. But before I get to that, I've got to take you back to the Hollywood Hills for moving day. NewsNation affiliate KTLA was there when the contents of the palatial house that Halle Berry once owned and David called home were boxed up and hauled away. You may have heard that the singer's manager signed a lease on that house for $20,000 a month. That was in February of last year, but he broke that lease just this week, the homeowner telling us that he agreed to the terms of the separation. And as it turns out, it appears that his young client, David, could well afford a house like that. There's new reporting on that as well, and I'm going to fill you in on just how much money David actually had in a moment. But take a look. These are the movers and the trucks. You can see that the movers' faces are clearly visible, but KTLA says that that was not the case for several other people who were part of this moving plan. Presumably, Team David. KTLA reporters said the people who also showed up with the movers had black wraps around their faces to obscure their identities. And at one point, someone drove off in a red Tesla that had been parked in the bay of the garage. That man, too, had a black wrap around his face. But unlike the black Tesla, where Celeste's remains spent days, if not weeks, decomposing in the frunk, the forward trunk in a Tesla, this Tesla, the red one, does not belong to David. KTLA reports its owner of record is Josh Marshall. And you may remember that's David's manager. And I have no idea what was in those boxes that came out of David's former party house, but I do know what was not in those boxes, likely key evidence or any potential evidence that LA police already confiscated 8 days ago. Because you'll probably recall about a dozen detectives spent almost 12 hours looking for, quote, blood evidence. And they left with multiple bags reportedly containing computers and other devices, among other evidence. Some possibly from the home's elaborate security system. The homeowner tells us he put cameras at every entrance years before David moved in, such that nobody could get in or out of that house without being seen. And how did a kid who was born in Queens and raised in Texas come to live in a mansion that was once owned by Halle Berry? David's real home seemed to be the internet, because as a kid, he made videos of himself playing the online game Fortnite. But, and this is a big but, he put his own music that he created over top the Fortnite videos so he could get around copyright issues that other music would make him deal with. Those clips of him blew up on TikTok, and they caught the eye of the record label Interscope, which in 2022 signed David to a deal worth a minimum of $3 million. David was just 17 when that happened. But TMZ says that the deal he signed was potentially worth twice that, $6 million, depending on how his sales went. And right now, in spite of everything that's going on, or maybe because of everything that's going on, David's music has never been hotter. According to Music News, one of his singles climbed to number 8 on Spotify this week and is also climbing on YouTube and Apple Music. When we come back, the TMZ producer who spoke with David's friends and broke a lot of news, those friends who believed that Celeste was David's girlfriend. Why didn't they ask questions? And do they believe that David is capable of the crime that happened in the trunk of his car? You won't believe what they have to say. Don't go anywhere. Tonight, we can finally dispose of all of the speculation around the singer known as David and the underage girl found decomposing in the trunk of his Tesla. Up until tonight, there'd really been no definitive proof that David Anthony Burke was actually in a romantic relationship with Celeste Rivas-Hernandez. But now there is. TMZ spoke with multiple friends of David who were, quote, under the impression that he and Celeste were indeed a couple, a romantic couple. David's friends believe that Celeste was 19 years old and a college student. Earlier today, I spoke with TMZ senior producer Charlie Neff, who is behind that breakthrough reporting. So, Charlie, you talked with friends of David. How did they know him, and how well did they know him?
Yeah, so the folks that I spoke to are in the LA music scene, so they know David very, very well. They didn't know Celeste as well as they knew David, but they did notice that he was bringing her along when they would go to parties in the music scene. Maybe they would have hangouts after a recording session, and they knew David to be a very gentle person, is what they told me. They also described him as very soft-spoken. Friends around him are extremely shocked that he's even remotely connected to this grisly murder of a 14-year-old girl. Obviously, he has not been named a person of interest. And from what we've seen, there is no legitimate connection connecting him to the death of this young girl. However, her remains were found in his car. And just that connection alone has really shocked a lot of people around him.
Did they get the impression that this was a romantic couple?
Yes, absolutely. So the people that I spoke to that were seeing them together out in the scene believed they were romantically involved. Now, look, they did not say anything about PDA, said that David was a very shy, quiet person, and Celeste seemed to mirror that as well. So they weren't out there making out at parties and things like that, but they did believe, because they would see them together so frequently, that these two were in a relationship.
Where did they get the idea that she was somehow a 19-year-old going to USC as a college kid?
I know. Isn't that just so crazy? Because, you know, we think, how does a 14-year-old child present as a 19-year-old woman? And I was told that these people were just so sure that she was a college student. They were specific. They said that she attended USC from what they believed. And also she was seen at events where there's age restrictions, you know, clubs and parties and stuff like this, where she had to be at least of 18 years old to get in. And we do know from law enforcement sources that she did have several fake IDs as well. So she was able to get into places where there was age restrictions. But,
you know, Charlie, it's so sad to hear that you and I are talking about a 14-year-old girl, but I keep going back to the fact that it's possible he connected with her as early as 12, and on the far end, maybe even 11. Did these friends have a long relationship with David? Like, for instance, did they know Celeste when she was maybe 13 or, God forbid, even 12?
Yeah, so the people that I spoke with just recently got to know him. You know, he has been popular for quite some time. We know that he had been signed to a record label when he was underage. However, he has kind of blown up in the music scene the past couple years. So it would have been the past couple years that they did know her. But yeah, she would have been, what, about 12 years old during the time that she was coming around. And, you know, we don't know a whole lot about who her friends were, if she did have friends. We just know that she was coming around more in his circle. And we know she wasn't really home very often because she wasn't attending school.
Well, God, if you think about it, you know, her friends would have been elementary school friends, because it's only a couple years ago that she would have been in elementary school. And if she disappeared at 13, she would have been just into middle school. And just the whole idea that we're talking about it is so uncomfortable. But I am so curious about her story and how she presents. And as you mentioned, these friends of David said she presented very much like a 19-year-old. Did they see her driving? Did they see her driving, say, his car? Because if she's telling everyone she's a USC student, she's got to be going out of the house or leaving his presence on a regular basis.
Yeah, these people did not see her driving or ever see her driving his car or anything of the such of the matter. But, she was always with him. So, everything he did in his life, she kind of seemed to follow.
Do we know, Charlie, if these friends had any inkling that Celeste had actually moved into that mansion, that she was full on a resident of that home in the Hollywood Hills with David?
So the people that we spoke with a lot of neighbors in the area, and they don't recall seeing Celeste, or at least don't remember seeing her face. I know there are reports out there saying that she had been living with David and was at least staying there in the past couple weeks, leading up to when she was discovered.
Did these friends of David ever mention that Celeste talked about her family or her home life, or let on anything about her personal life?
Yeah, so the people that I spoke with didn't know much about her. It doesn't seem like this really came up, at least in like a social gathering or a social scene. No one really questioned much about her background. Like I mentioned, they just knew her as this college student that went to USC. It doesn't look like they really unpacked that. You kind of just take somebody at their word when they say things like that.
Did you get the impression that they thought David might actually be involved in this extraordinarily mysterious and tragic death?
So when I spoke to people around him, they were shocked that he was even remotely in, just the same sentence of this grisly, gruesome murder. Just the fact that it was his car that her remains were found in, they were shocked because, they said he appeared to be a very gentle guy, very shy guy, quiet. I also was told that his family is very conservative. They were very much involved in his life. Remember, he's just a 20-year-old, and his family was very much a part of his career from the beginning. And so for him to even be connected in any kind of way, again, he is not a person of interest, but for it just to be his car, they thought was just extremely disturbing and confusing. And just how could anybody do this, especially somebody that they would see at social scenes and things like that? They just can't believe it. It's extremely shocking for them.
Do you know if these friends that you talked to have also been interviewed by the police?
So I did speak with somebody who said that they have not personally been interviewed by police, but they believe that it's absolutely possible that other people in that group could have been interviewed by police. I'm sure police are trying to make sure that there's no stone unturned, and they are combing through everything to try to piece together this just horrific case.
If I were a betting man, Charlie, I'd say he would be going to his support system, which, as you just mentioned, he's got a supportive family. I think they're in Houston. Does anybody know if that's a possibility? Any sightings, any hint, anything about Houston?
There hasn't been any sightings. And like you mentioned, he is from Texas originally. And we do know that he has a couple homes out there as well, which it does not appear that there have been any search warrants for either one of those homes. There haven't been any sightings. So it appears he's in hiding. I'd imagine, like I mentioned, he is not a person of interest. Maybe, if he has no connection to this grisly murder whatsoever, he obviously knew who this young girl was. I imagine that would be extremely hard and painful to hear what unfolded to somebody But, and it's unclear if he's spoken to police, but hopefully they get to the bottom of it soon.
Boy, I sure hope police know where he is. If you and I don't, I sure hope they have a handle on where he is, because my feeling is now that he's lawyered up, they still have some questions for him. Charlie Neff, amazing work. Great journalism and a really good interview. Thanks so much. I appreciate this.
Thank you so much, Ashleigh, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
And still ahead tonight, the remains of Celeste Rivas-Hernandez were so decomposed they may not give investigators much to go on. But David's Tesla might. Last night, we talked about the digital trove of forensic information that car will hand over to the police. But if cops find the driver and the person who closed the trunk for the final time, does that mean they found the killer? Straight ahead, the art of the squeeze. How to hang decades of prison over someone until they talk. A detective who cracked Lacey Peterson's case is next. There may be a star witness in the death of Celeste Rivas-Hernandez. Till now, it's been a total mystery. Who wrapped her up in plastic and closed her into the trunk of a Tesla until she decomposed beyond recognition? Well, there's a very good chance that the Tesla knows. If you were with us here last night, we listed off all the ways that Teslas record everything that happens around them. And if you missed it, you can check that out on my podcast, Drop Dead Serious. But the 2023 Model Y Tesla is a virtual rolling studio and hard drive all-in-one. 8 cameras on the outside, 1 camera on the inside. It can tell you who closed that trunk and when that closed trunk happened. It can tell you how many doors opened and closed after that trunk opened and closed for the last time. And it can tell you where the car drove from before it was abandoned. Best case scenario, the car identifies the driver. But if the driver isn't the killer, how can police squeeze that driver for more information? Nobody knows what gets a guy to talk quite like my next guest. John Bueller is a former detective in the Modesto, California PD, and he worked one of the most infamous dismemberment cases of our time, the Laci Peterson murder. John, welcome back. I was dying to talk to you about this. What exactly could you hang over the driver of that Tesla to say, you want to go to prison facing X, Y, and Z? If not, talk.
Well, there's a whole bunch of tools that you have when you're interviewing people. And one of the big things is you have to figure out if they've got a lot to lose. And the more somebody has to lose, the more you can work on alternate plans for their future. So if with this case, it sounds to me like it's kind of a sloppy murder. You just leave a dismembered body in a trunk. Not a lot of pre-planning with that. It possibly was, but it's pretty sloppy on the tail end. So if you can get the guy identified that was last driving the car, and especially if you saw him putting the bag in the trunk of the dismembered remains and everything like that, you pull him in and you talk to him about, whether or not he did it or not, or if he's an accessory after the fact, accomplice before the fact. If he was involved in the murder and the killing itself, he's looking at 25 to life, just like the killer. But if he was actually just disposing of the evidence, essentially the body, then you're going to have to play with him a little bit and see if he's willing to talk. Now, for me, at least when it comes to a murder like this, I want the guy who killed the girl. That's who I'm most interested in. And I would be willing to trade somebody who was involved in the cleanup if I could get him to make the case stronger against the actual killer.
So if you threaten him with accomplice to murder, even if you don't think he is, I know that police tactics, you can say anything to get somebody to be a little bit worried about his or her position. But accomplice to murder is 25 to life. Accessory to murder is 15 to life. And unlawful disposal of human remains is only 1 year. So 1 year doesn't sound quite as scary. What else can you tag on to all of these to scare somebody?
Well, besides the 1 year for unlawful disposal of human remains, you could talk to him about disposing of evidence, tampering with evidence, and that could be a 3-year felony depending on how much he did. It might go all the way down to 6 months, depending on what he was involved in. But when it comes to these things, we never threatened people, or at least I didn't, because you have to answer for that when you go to court. So I tried to make sure that my interviews were at least palatable to the jury. No false promises, no hitting him in the head with a phone book or anything like that, but trying to present him with a couple of options, and the best option is save yourself, give us what we need to make our case stronger, and then maybe we can work a deal where you become a witness instead of a co-responsible. We did that on several cases, and you ended up letting a guy go sometimes for a crime that he was involved in, but for the greater good, to get a solid sentence and a good conviction on the guy that killed him, sometimes that's the way to go.
Well, I own this same Tesla, and I literally understand how much of my privacy I've given up having this Tesla and having the luxury of having Sentry mode, protect, my car for me, and basically scare people off if they even walk near it. All those things come with a price. And if they're able to get the guy or girl who closed that trunk for the last time on Celeste and then got into the driver's side, and if the other passenger side door also opened, that's registered, and they're able to find a couple of people, I mean, you really do have something on them. I mean, they're recorded potentially on camera doing this. Is there an obstruction of justice here as well?
Well, only if they would keep information from you that they had. You could try and get a charge like that. But charges like that are kind of lightweight, and it depends on the prosecutor, and it also depends on the person's prior criminal history. If they've been in trouble a lot and they've been arrested a lot, well, then maybe you could work on that, especially if they're on parole. The parole officers and parole agents have a lot of latitude and a lot of muscle to use over somebody who's out in public on parole. So we have that. But generally, in a case like this, the car is going to be a huge piece of evidence. And even though they say that David is not a person of interest, he might be. They're just keeping it close to the vest.
Well, I wouldn't serve 15 years to protect somebody if he asked me to clean up a crime. That's just me, though. John Buehler, it's good to have you. Thanks for this.
Always good to see you. Thanks so much.
You too. Look forward to seeing you again. Still to come, how do you track down an alibi that can save you from a world of hurt that may be brewing ahead? It's something David might want to have in his pocket, and it's next. Right now, nobody needs an alibi more than the singer David, wrapped up in the suspicious death of an underage girl. But could it be easier for him than we all think? Tomorrow, we're going to break down the roadmap of his tour schedule. If he is thousands of miles away when Celeste died and was stuffed into the trunk of his car, is he in the clear? Was there time for him to fly home in between gigs? Did he have the money? Be sure to watch. We've got it all laid out for you, and it's a pretty interesting little map. Thank you so much for watching tonight. Really appreciate having you here. Cuomo starts now.